Call Tracking Metrics offers a very robust and easy-to-use integration with the HubSpot CRM. To start, let's talk about some of the context for the integration. Call Tracking Metrics provides a snippet of JavaScript the customers can place on their website. With this snippet of JavaScript in place, visitors that click into the website are going to see different tracking numbers where the normal phone number appears based on how they got to that website. So an example would be if somebody clicked into a page from an expensive Google Ads click, instead of the target number that normally appears on the website, our script is going to swap this number and show the Google Ads tracking number. And the same thing goes for Microsoft paid advertising, Facebook paid ads, any other type of visitor that you can define either by their referring URL or a landing URL, including their UTM parameters. We have the ability to find and replace the number that normally appears and show one of our tracking numbers. Now, when visitors pick up and call that tracking number, Call Tracking Metrics not only has the caller ID information, the number they called, and the top level source that's associated to that number, we also have potentially lots of session data, all of the click behavior from that visitor that we were able to pick up with our tracking code that we've matched to this phone call. All of that information is great for Call Tracking Metrics to have in our application, but it's even better when we can share it through integrations like our integration with HubSpot. So the way that this integration works is a CTM user would first link their HubSpot account. Once that connection has been made and CTM has access to this HubSpot account, then the next thing that a user is going to need to do is define some order for searching and mapping. So we can look for different values that we want to use to match to HubSpot records. We can use a HubSpot token that we might have picked up from that visitor that was on the website if the person also has a HubSpot tracking code on their website. This is the most common and most accurate way to match contacts. The next most popular, and the thing that we're going to have with just about every activity, is a phone number. So people love to match a Call Tracking Metrics phone number to a contact in a HubSpot CRM. Any of the phone fields that you have in HubSpot, we'll look at those fields, and if we find a match based on our caller, we're going to assume that the last modified HubSpot record that has that phone number is the record that we should match to. Then we can also use the email field or the name field. These ones are a little bit more iffy and less consistent because with your basic caller ID, Call Tracking Metrics isn't always going to have an email address that's accurate for that caller. Similar, we're not going to have a name. The caller ID for the name that they're broadcasting from their cell phone might be Toledo, Ohio, or Baltimore, Maryland, which probably isn't going to be the accurate name of the CRM contact that you have in place. You can adjust these priorities and you can choose whether to use them or not, and you can use the first record in a list or a last record in a list whenever we're matching these types of records. So now that we know how we're going to find and match records, the next thing that we need to do is establish field mappings. So you can see in this test account, I already have a few different HubSpot mappings configured, but you can create as many as possible, and you can create mappings from any of the CTM values that are available to these objects in your HubSpot. So do you want us to look for contact records? Do you want us to look for company records? Or do you want us to look for deal record types? We could take a look at the basic HubSpot mapping that we have set up here. And you can see on the left, you're going to find the CTM field that you want to send. In the middle column here, we're going to find the HubSpot field that we're going to map it to. And then you also have the ability to set a default value. So the default value will allow you to use tokens or variables from Call Tracking Metrics. So I could pick a default value here, and I could use maybe a custom field that I have in Call Tracking Metrics. So I would do something like this, custom.field.address, right? So anything that we have in Call Tracking Metrics or that can be defined in the Call Tracking Metrics activity log, general rule is you have the ability to map that to one of these HubSpot objects. We can also choose the overwrite HubSpot value. Some people like to use the CRM as the source of truth in all cases. They don't want other platforms like CTM updating fields on a contact record that's in HubSpot. So you can choose whether you always want us to update that value if something already exists, whether we never update anything, or only when the value is blank. So with these mapping conditions established, then I can go to the call tracking metrics triggers. And this is our workflow automation builder. The triggers let you define a time around an activity, whether that's the start, the end, or end delayed after the activity is ended, and we've had a chance to process all of the recordings and the transcriptions and done our sync with our Google integration. So we've got all the campaign and ad group and keyword information that we're going to get from Google related to that activity. And then when that timing is met, we're going to look at this workflow, and the workflow allows you to define just about anything you can think of around an activity. So is it within a schedule? Is it this day? Is it a first time contact or a repeat contact? Is there an activity with talk time more than a certain duration? And you can even do this conditionally based on what kind of HubSpot record was linked previously, or what kind of HubSpot record did we find when we did this lookup based on the caller's number. And we can have this run only if we found a record that matched one of these types. So these are the conditions. This is very highly customizable. So you only send stuff to HubSpot for the activities that you really intend to, and then we'll define an action. And one of the actions that we're going to see here is the ability to do a HubSpot record sync. We can also assign the agent based on the record that we matched in HubSpot, or we can associate call tracking metrics activity with that HubSpot record. The most common activity that we see here, or action, is the HubSpot record sync. So when the activity meets this criteria, we're going to do this HubSpot record sync, and we're going to have a list here of all of those mappings that we've saved in the HubSpot integration screen. So if I pick basic HubSpot, and the next thing that we can choose here is the update or insert mode. So as with a lot of CRMs, you have three different options for updating data from external platforms. You can do an insert only, means that we're only creating things in HubSpot. We're never going to update anything that's existing there. Again, that scenario where the CRM is the source of truth. We don't want to touch anything once it's been in the CRM, once it's entered into that sales cycle. And then you have update only, and that's the exact opposite. We're only updating existing things. So only when we find something is CTM going to do any kind of mapping or updating to the objects. And then you have the upsert behavior, which is the best of both worlds. If we find something, we're going to update that existing record. If we don't find something, we're going to create one for you with the defined parameters from your mapping. We have some options for how we sync with HubSpot depending on how your HubSpot instance is configured. We can use a local number format instead of the standard E.164 format. So maybe depending on your HubSpot phone fields, how those are configured, whether it's the local phone number format with like brackets and a dash between the number grouping, or if it's the E.164 where it's a plus sign, then the country code, and then the number with no other spaces or anything. Associating the call to text or form, that'll help us match repeat callers. That'll help us handle the next call if we've already associated a CTM activity to that record. We have the ability to set the record owner. So in the HubSpot setup, there's the ability to map users to your CTM users to your respective HubSpot users. Once that table's in place, if you have agents fielding activities and call tracking metrics, then we can assume if an inbound call came in from a Google ad click, I'm a sales rep and I take that call, and we're going to automatically create a new contact in HubSpot, that because I'm the agent that took that call, you want to set me as the record owner. We do see scenarios where we have, we might have 5 sales reps in CTM, but we all want those to be the sales manager set as the record owner, not the individual reps. In that case, you would leave this blank, but I think it's pretty common in a sales environment. The person that's answering the call for those is going to be set as the record owner. And then we have the ability to log the call engagement. And what that means is that we're going to add this call to the activity timeline in HubSpot according to that mapping. So again, if we look at the call tracking metrics interface here, you see that we've got calls that have come in, we've got information, we have the ability to have agents making and receiving these phone calls, and then based on that workflow rule behind the scenes, what could be happening at the end of each of these activities is we're automatically looking at HubSpot based on this caller's phone number, and we're doing an insert and update or the upsert behavior. When we do match to a HubSpot record, and we create one, you'll see this handy icon in the right here in the actions, the HubSpot contact. So this is the HubSpot contact that we've associated now to this activity. And by clicking there, it'll take me right to the HubSpot record. So this is a record that was both created by Call Tracking Metrics, and you can see some of the values that were mapped on the contact properties here. But we also have been logging events to the timeline for this caller. So you can see all of these inbound call events that have been added to this contact are repeat calls from the same person. And through this mapping, we've defined these values that we're going to push into these activity timelines. So you see we've got the call with the caller ID that we had. In this case, it was just Miami, Florida via YouTube. This was the tracking source associated to that phone call. And then we provide a link directly to that phone call that you could click on and go back to call tracking metrics to that specific activity. And we could provide a link to the recording and the audio here. In this case, there was no recording. And we display the talk time. How long was that conversation? Some other features that we provide around the HubSpot integration are a form solution. So we have the ability from call tracking metrics to configure to link with HubSpot forms. And you can do that by capturing this URL, and in any of your HubSpot flows, when the flow gets to a certain stage, whether it's a HubSpot form or any other workflow that you build in HubSpot, what you can do is add a post to this URL. And what's going to happen when the HubSpot workflow gets to this stage and we post to this URL is that activity is going to show up in call tracking metrics as a form. So this is a great way to get different events bidirectionally shown in call tracking metrics as well from the HubSpot integration. Another tool that people like with the HubSpot integration is related to our call routing. So call tracking metrics has call queues and how we distribute calls to different agents or different receiving numbers. Your usual things, a simultaneous, a round robin, ring group. But in this, we also have how we select agents, and in most cases there's a next available agent, but there's also a HubSpot option here. So when a call goes through this queue, we can choose to route that call to the HubSpot contact owner first. So a call comes in, we've got a caller number, we've got potentially 5 different agents in this queue that we could simultaneously ring calls to. But this setting in this queue is going to look at the HubSpot record first. If we matched a record and that record has an owner that's one of those 5 agents, we're going to ring this either to that agent first before we give the rest of the team a crack at it, or we're going to ring the HubSpot owner only, and we're not going to give those other 4 agents in this queue even a chance to answer that call because we don't want them to answer a call that belongs to another rep. So lots of cool features with HubSpot, lots of great ways to sync data back and forth between call tracking metrics in your HubSpot CRM.